Well, I feel grateful to sit here in such a supportive environment, and that supportive environment has been the work of many hands and eyes down through the years. I was in touch with Victor, Dr. Victor Byrne, recently. He'd sent me an essay, which I enjoyed reading very much. He writes some essays that he posts to his website. And for those of you who don't know, who may be new to Long Beach Meditation, Victor was the founder and the driving force behind the organization for many years. And certainly without his efforts, we wouldn't have this opportunity. So I just wanted to acknowledge him. The Buddhist lineage is very important to Buddhism, put it that way. Every time I sit here, at first the iPad was on kind of the view where I just see myself, which could be, don't want to stare into that too long, you know. But I can see over my shoulder, of course, the representation of the historical Buddha behind me. It has the advantage, of course, of being carved out of wood and able to sit 24/7, 365, and never lose the slight smile on his face there. Buddhism, to me, when I began practice, I wasn't particularly interested in something called Buddhism per se, you know, to become a Buddhist, but rather the worldviews that I'd been raised in or explored so far were dissatisfactory in explaining the world or my life, and just the mystery of being a person in the world. And Buddhism is certainly a great strength of it, is that it is a direct inquiry into what is real. We can put it that way. So if we shave off of the religious aspects, of the traditional aspects, and the incense and the bows and the shaved heads, or whatever cultural things that if we pare all of that down to the actual what is the core is the mystery of human being human, arriving in this world mysteriously and living this reality over this period of time. It seems to come and go, right? Past, moving forward toward the future, and coming to terms with that, not through in this case, not through a belief system or having it explained, but through rather the laboratory of your own lived experience, seeing what is real. And what the Buddha discovered, and what really drove him in his practice, as it's recorded, is that the human condition, of course, has the characteristic of dukkha, or dissatisfactoriness, right? Or sometimes translated as suffering, right? That there is dissatisfaction and difficulty that is inherent in the human condition. I'm sure we can all agree with that, right? Right? So that comes with part and parcel of this experience of being in a body in the world. And so through his efforts, using meditation, or having meditation be the fundamental practice, and ultimately the practice that was able to answer his questions or liberate him to the degree that he was able to impart teaching to others. Meditation was a core practice there to be able to directly experience this world, this life as it is, and from there be able to see what is causing difficulty, how we're misunderstanding the world, how we're misunderstanding reality, and through present awareness, through seeing things as they are, lessen the dukkha or dissatisfaction, lessen the ultimately unnecessary suffering, move away from difficulty and pain and toward benefit and a return to wholeness. So that's really the path of Buddhism. And of course, from there, then this tradition, religion, message, however we frame it, spreads to many different countries and is being practiced here now. But not that we have to identify. You don't have to identify with being a Buddhist in order to glean the benefit of Buddhist practice. That's another key benefit. Right? You don't have to carry that identity. It really all that's required is the desire to come to terms with this life for ourselves, and the discipline to really to sit and to really to look and to work through the challenges that arise. Because in practice, whichever style or particular lineage of meditation that we practice, it tends to take a long time. There's a discipline and a regular practice involved in order to make our lives clearer and to really to gain a deeper realization. Coming into alignment again with what's real. That's what we're doing when we're sitting, we're meditating. In a very practical way, coming back into alignment with the broader whole. Right? Because as human key aspect of the human condition, we have a sense of separation from others and the rest of the world. We tend to experience the body and mind as being very close right here, walking around in a world of things, and understanding the world and navigating it with this dualistic consciousness that is always subject-object and comparing high to low and good to bad. And when we live in that way as a human being, that isn't involved in finding happiness, but or enduring happiness, but is rather involved in attachment and aversion. That's something that the Buddha pointed out. Right? Attachment and aversion, as in we want the good things, we want move towards pleasure or the objects of desire of our mind, and we move away from the things that we don't want. But as we all well know at this point in our lives, the world isn't cooperative with our preferences, right? To some degree, yeah, there's some minimal impact there. For the most part, though, things come as they do, and we can often struggle with that. In the tradition in which I've practiced has been the Zen tradition. I'm conscious that there are several other teachers here from Long Beach meditation and from other Zen traditions too. So I'm conscious I'm speaking amongst my peers here, and I offer something I hope from the Zen tradition that has come down from China, Japan to the United States. The roots of that, of course, come from India. This word dhyana, which we can translate now as meditation, was translated as chan in China, and then that word is translated in Japanese as Zen. And if we go back to somewhere around the 6th century, give or take 100 years, there was an Indian teacher, practitioner, who was just, I'm going to guess 20 or 30 generations from the Buddha forward in time, Bodhidharma, an Indian mystic and practitioner who traveled from China to India. And I was going to bring up something from his teaching, which again is around the 6th century, so it stood the test of time. It's been kicking around for 1400 years or so, and people have found it useful. And why is it's immediately relevant and accessible now? Why? Because people were human beings then, dealing with the human condition, and we're human beings now, living a human life. So it's directly relevant. Okay, so Bodhidharma talked about an outline of practice, or a way to enter into and practice the Buddhist way or the way of, you could say, the way of presence, the mindful way, the way of an awakened way. Right? So we shouldn't get bogged down with the language of the terms like Buddhism or Zen. This is about being fully alive and living an upright, present and engaged life in the world. Right? That's what we're talking about. That's what meditation helps to foster and sustain. Now, to enter into this way, Bodhidharma said there are two main gates. One is to enter by principle, and the second is to enter by practice. And it's not pick one or the other. Right? We can do both. We can be greedy in a positive way and enter both by principle and practice. To enter by principle, the enlightenment of the Buddha cannot be explained in words. It can be sketched out in words, but when we point at the experience of awakening or enlightenment, any words that are used to describe that are usually clumsy metaphors at best, and at worst can be downright kind of misleading. Right? So if we take that word enlightenment, it said that the Buddha saw the morning star after long years of practice and a week of sitting practice, beaten down by his failures ultimately, and committing to sit until he found realization. It said that opened his eyes and saw the morning star and was enlightened. And that has both inspired, has really inspired the tradition, but it's also caused confusion for many people too. Like, what is this enlightenment? In Zen, when we talk about the Buddha, typically we're talking about the Buddha's enlightenment, the Buddha's realization. And that is that he was able to enter by principle, what Bodhidharma calls principle. At the heart of things, we have a conundrum as a human being where, as I said a few minutes ago, I have a real sense of I, me. Right? I'm sure you do too. Right? There's a sense of I, me, never really been able to pin it down. Right? It's not a thing, it's a process that's unfolding. I've got the name, the history, the relationships, the likes, the dislikes, right? But you can't grasp it. It can't be really found or defined, but it also can't be denied. That's certainly going on. There's this like sense of I, me that is like in appearance pretty much all of the time. Now that I, me is living in a world of other I, me's. There's 40 or so of them here and 20 or so of them here, right? But at the heart of things, are we actually separate? There's often a sense of separation from people and things, but at the root of things, we are not separate. Now I can say that, okay, we are not separate at the root of things, but we may still feel separate. But, modern scientific inquiry, which the Buddha or Bodhidharma did not have at their disposal, shows us that at the heart, at the very core of reality, everything is completely interconnected and entangled, right? Throughout the whole universe, which is extraordinary, right? This is an extraordinary happening that we're all involved in. Right, but as rather than using particle accelerators, which would be difficult to fit in here and cost a lot of money, we just come and sit, and instead we can find the genuine experience or realization of that fundamental interconnection in this direct experience that we are now. We can come in the door feeling very much an I, me kind of sense. We see people and say hello, we have a conversation, no problem. And then we sit down. And then we can enter by this principle. How do we do that? Or how do we not do that? Right? So in the talking about the basics for meditation, it's really all given away there. This is the whole of the practice. Sit down, find a good basis for the body, so you don't have to, we're not going to be in a lot of pain. Be reasonably comfortable at least. Find initially a point of concentration, an anchor point which helps to take the mind, which tends to be running all over, as maybe has been running all over the place, helps to center and bring our awareness to single-pointed focus. So we do that with breathing. And then opening up to, we said, the sounds of the street, the appearance of people and things in the room, and allowing in all of the internal, what we may feel like is internal experience, thought and feeling and whatever is going on, and then what we usually categorize as external experience, again, sounds on the street, movement, whatever is going on. And then to enter by principle is to surrender and dissolve the value, the preferring system, with preferential system, which is grabbing on to appearances and whatever is coming there, and holding up something as being valuable and something not. Like a key one for us as meditators or practitioners is often that me thinking about stuff seems important, right? It's not important. But we're hardwired, we're very conditioned to think about what I'm thinking about is important. Most of what we think is not. I'll speak for myself. Most of what I'm thinking is it's not important. It's usually there's a lot of repetitive noise there. It's not, and somehow though we find that to be more compelling or important than the sound of the cars on the street. Fundamentally, it isn't. Fundamentally, everything is even, and the importance is all just our conditioned reflex, right? There's like, we're attaching importance. And that we can intellectually, or we can practice and decide, okay, I'm not going to sit and think about things. I'll put this practice into being. And then we find that actually it's not so easy. It's not easy to surrender this kind of preferring, picking mind. It's not it's surprisingly difficult, right? Because that holding on of the way that we hold on to phenomena and call things important or not important runs very deep. There's no off switch, and it's very much kind of embodied in the way that we operate. But that is the practice of just sitting. That's a practice of Zen sitting. Right? Even we can grasp it intellectually that if you have no concern for how things are showing up right now, then there's really no problem. If you have no concern for the thoughts passing through your mind, they're just like cars on the street, you have no concern for noise or whether it's quiet or not, but you're just directly experiencing things as they are, then you start to understand something of sitting, of truly being able to sit like this, like a piece of wood that has no problem, right? You can just sit as a Buddha for this amount of time. And then deeper still, the awareness that it feels like, okay, now this is my awareness. I'm experiencing this. Oh, now hold on. I'm experiencing myself thinking. So who is that one? And then as we go deeper, all of these positions can just be surrendered or let go of. Right? So that ultimately, to enter by principle in this way, is when you sit, it's nothing to do with you or me. It's nothing to do with this one. You just sit and then allow the world, the whole world, in its interconnected, vast appearance, to unfold as it does, as it is, as it will anyway. But now you are a clear mirror. Now you're a clear piece of glass that is allowing the world to live you, aware you, and experience this. This is more to the line of entering by principle. Ultimately, to enter in this way, again, and this is where words are also clumsy. It's really about the practice, right? But it's a difficult or subtle practice, because the practice of non-doing is difficult to do, not do, right? It's like, how do you do that then, right? But it's just, that's something we figure out in our meditation. But in a very practical way, how wonderful it is to maybe, we have like a sea of noise in our heads, and we're worried about this, that, and tomorrow I've got to go to the bank, and then I've got to pick up, and I've got a doctor's appointment on Thursday, and then whatever's, all of the stuff and the chop and the noise, to be able to just really let all of that go, right? But not let it go as in get rid of it or exhaust it, but just have no concern and just let it all flow. What shifts the difference is not grabbing or identifying with the content. You let go of content and just sit, then it's really all of no concern. And you don't have to worry about, well, if I don't identify with it, will I lose my sense of self? Don't worry, your sense of self will be right there as soon as you need it. Because this happens naturally. So what we're doing is just returning to the natural way of things. Returning to the original nature of self. Often we just become, we're carrying around an idea which is somewhat distorted idea of me, I. And distorted idea of self. And sitting, meditation and practice is coming back to just the original nature of reality, the original nature of self. And that is nourishing for the body-mind. The body-mind likes to sit. I don't like to sit. Me-I likes to do other things. Right? Me-I wants to check my phone. Me-I wants to, etc., etc. Right? That one is always involved in preference. But you can sit and be just deeply involved in non-preference. And this really powers then, when not sitting, your functionality in, well, that's more of a practice aspect, which I'll get into. That's enough about principle, perhaps, right? So then he says, okay, probably knowing that entering by principle, how wonderful, but there's no map there and can't really be explained well. However, you can also and should also enter by practice. Okay, so entering by practice. Okay, so he has 4 points for this. Okay, so one is accepting and enduring the results of all past karma or past actions. That sounds great. Difficult in our lives. Like accepting fully everything that ever happened, and that's okay. That's it. Now it's not relatively okay. This is so we can immediately start to fall through trapdoors here. Because all of us in our lives will have things that, karma that either, we've been involved in has happened to us. Some of it is generational, it's cultural, it's societal, it involves other people, it's complicated, it's messy, right? All of the past conditioning that's ever happened to us. But intrinsically and fundamentally, whatever our relationship to that conditioning and that karma, That's what happened. And we are the living result of all of these causes and conditions. Throughout the whole life of time of the universe had to happen for us to be sat here on a Sunday afternoon. Everything had to happen that ever happened to us. And to really to see that and to fundamentally be aligned and accepting of that. Orient the word enduring that. And that has a sense like the sense of endurance is it's not easy. You have to endure. Right? It's like all of the past, we are living now the consequences of past actions. Of mine, of yours, of everybody else's, and everything else's. But if we can accept that, then we've got a blank slate starting place, always, for practice. Then the second is to practice according to conditions. Practice according to conditions. So, often when people come to the Zen Center, come to Yokoji and do retreats, and then often like a common question is, how do I take this practice into everyday life? Right? We can sit, we can do a day-long retreat or a week-long retreat or whatever it is and just discover something of this, gain some understanding and some realization, and then naturally we're like, okay, I don't want to get swallowed up by the world again and the chaos of things. How do I take this into everyday life? Then practice according to conditions. So this awareness that we all are at the root, undoubtedly, we're experiencing, this is awareness now, which is constant, unchanging, and to all intents and purposes, let's call it eternal, who knows? But it's always this. Right? Then how do we practice according to conditions? You know, when it's time to sit, we come in here, and we're practicing according to conditions as we walk in and see one another, greet one another, you know, how you doing, you know, conversation, whatever is appropriate, practicing according to conditions. And then we sit down, and then the room becomes quiet, practicing according to conditions. The bell is struck. Okay, now it's time to sit, to meditate. That then becomes the practice of according and aligning with conditions. And then we move and go to the restroom and practice according. So everything is a natural response to changing conditions. It's like when you drive home this evening, you drive at red light, you know, come to a stoplight, you obey those rules, you look, you're engaged. So this practicing according to conditions is meeting life as it is, always, constantly unfolding. Like, you know, it's kind of like causes and conditions. It's like kind of, well, I just was thinking, is it like standing in front of a fire hose? Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's that way. Sometimes it's very easy. But life is always coming at us. Oh, but that sounds a little wrong, because that's a little like me and life coming at me. Right? It's just all of this, all together, all of us, everything at once is just always unfolding. Right? And it's unfolding as not knowing. We have an idea. You might have a sketch for tomorrow. I've got an idea for tomorrow. I know what time I'm going to get up, roughly. You know, and then a few errands I've got to do, and I've got to remember. So we have like our sketch, right? But it's not going to look like that. It's not going to look like anything we can imagine. Tomorrow will look nothing like what you think it could look like. Got an idea and an outline, right? But it's like 99% of it has not been coloured in. You just got an outline of Monday. And then we colour it in. And it's happening, it's unfolding and revealing itself in real time. To practice according to those conditions is to be vitally present and engaged with things as they are. Where we run amiss is like when we're trapped in the mind of how things ought to be, what should happen, and what shouldn't happen. Familiar, right? This is like human condition. We always have that. The preferring function and the belief system that we're constructing, the narrative, the ideas, the opinion, you know, and yet things are just going to go as they go. If we can match that, then we can ride that wave rather than swimming against it. Right? So this is like practicing according to conditions. The next one, the third one, the practice of seeking nothing. Difficult for human beings, right? Because we're always looking, me is looking for something, trying to like, you know, rake a few more bucks in, or trying to like maybe like arrange to go on a trip, you know, whatever that may be. We're always looking for something, and we're involved in trying to improve, right? But we're also immersed in this human condition of this attachment and aversion. So what is it to seek nothing? Right? This is like turning that around, the impulse to like always be moving to something better, always using this moment as a springboard for the next moment, and rather to live and make our base camp, make our home in this, the fullness of this now, the fullness of the present experience, where we're not looking for something else, not looking to be somebody else, not trying to become more enlightened either, not trying to, right? Those are very relative, kind of like we might have that orientation towards where we're heading somewhere, we're trying to be. That relative function is there, but we don't let it obscure the freedom and the peace of this present now, where there is, fundamentally, there is no problem here. There's no problem here. Now our mind may rush in and say, I got a few problems. But those, you know, those challenges, those problems, those are the things that we do. But they can so easily consume us and obscure the beauty and the stillness and the freedom of this present experience now. And that's available to us throughout our everyday activity. If we remember, if we can come back and realize that over and over again. Meditation of the practice discipline of meditation and mindful functioning helps to like really bring that front and center. Right? So we're not looking for something else other than what we're doing right now. That doesn't mean you can't have planning for next year, or having a 5-year plan, or thinking about your retirement, or whatever that may be. But often we just misappropriate energy and time in dwelling on the future, dwelling in the future, or thinking about the future, trying to shape and manipulate the future, or dwelling in the past, and not focusing and being alive and fully involved in the present now. So again, this is about just reorienting and coming back to our natural way of experience. But through being a human being and living in constant conditioning, we tend to fall out of sync with the present and out of alignment with life, out of alignment with reality, and then get trapped in an identity that is worried about the future or is consumed by the past. Right? So just in a very practical sense, becoming more alive and more involved and more intimate with this right now. Practice of seeking nothing and knowing that this is enough. You don't have to become, how about that? You don't have to become something else. You don't have to be anybody else. Right? This kind of runs counter to the whole societal impulse. Buy this and you can feel better. Buy this and you can become more. Go here and you will. How about no? This one, as I am, as this is, the world as it is, this is enough. This is more than enough. I don't need more. Don't need to move to something else. That right there, there's a wonderful depth of acceptance and allowing of just your own life, your own karma, everything that ever happened. To accept and allow that. To accept and allow the world as it is, in all of its messed upness. Right? But intrinsically, there's no problem there either. But this is a very thin line and you easily fall over, because if I say there's no problem here now, you can say, well, what about? Well, what about? And that's so, but that what about is always relative, and there's no end to that. Right? The practice here is to become aware and enlightened about what is absolute. And then you can better navigate the relative. And then the fourth one, practice the Dharma. I'm using this translation, it's and practice. So what have we been talking about? For to practice the Dharma. But we're fortunate in that we are just, we have wonderful teachers, both living and past. Right? We have everything at our disposal. We have great guides. We have the traditions. We have wisdom from, not just from Buddhism or from Zen, but from many different from everywhere. We're quite spoiled with opportunity to really avail ourselves of the Dharma, of the teachings, of the truth. And so that's to remember and to come back to that over and over. We to have that practice that we can always return to. For myself, I would much rather enter by principle, directly. Right? I don't like to practice. I don't know about you. I don't like to do a lot of practice. It's it's like I'd rather much rather live naturally, right? Accord naturally, live spontaneously, live naturally, right? That's how. However, that has its own shadow too. If I just go straight ahead and trust that this and then just live, then I'll start to fall out of sync with life. Again, the world and people around will give me feedback that some things aren't working with your naturalness. It's maybe you want to rein some of that natural you in, because it's not working. So that's the practice aspect. Live naturally, be who you are, but then practice is always there where we can refine and work on those more, the negative aspects of our own personality and way. We all have them. Work on those. And then work to promote and raise up the more positive aspects. And that's, practice is really the backbone that helps us to do that. Okay, so that's it's probably enough to be going on with, isn't it? But in terms of principle and practice, but I want to just to assure everybody that as you are, the person who you are, as this is. It's not that these people like the Buddha, Bodhidharma, or these teachers from the past are on some, pedestals or just these immaculate beings. There's a tendency from people who, long time ago, they get kind of deified and polished, and we remember all of the good stuff. But they were just human. They were human beings with their foibles and their dark aspects and those things too. I am well sure, just the same as you and I. But we all have in common this wondrous essential nature, this original nature of self that we have been experiencing, that we experience unendedly, that nobody can grasp or define or understand, but we can experience it more fully every day through our practice, in order to become ever more engaged, alive people in the world. And that is a real positive. If you just come along, you practice meditation, you're involved in mindful practices, you practice in awareness, that you become a present and aware person. That's what's transmitted to your family, your friends, the world. Not that that they notice or say much in terms of like, wow, thanks for that. It's like it's a mixed message that comes back often, but that's what's being offered. That's what's being offered to the world, and that's of real benefit. That's worth a lot.